welcome to the CLINUVEL podcast. I'm Sarah and I lead on projects for our CBM team here at CLINUVEL. And I'm thrilled to be joined today by Lynn, our Regulatory Affairs Manager for Cosmetics. Hi Alice, thanks for joining us.
Hi Sarah, thank you. Great to be here today.
Now, we'd planned to run a podcast this week on cosmetic testing, talking about some of the work that you oversee here at CLINUVEL. But given news out of Australia recently, I'm talking about the SPF testing results from Choice. Let's just say not every brand passed with flying colours.
No, so just to give you a brief background, Choice is the independent consumer advocacy group in Australia, and they've recently put 20 sunscreens to the test. And rather shockingly, almost half did not meet the SPF label claims.
Yeah, that's quite scary. So what does this mean, and what do we look for when buying sunscreen?
So to sort of just go back on what happened. So they tested 20 sunscreens available for stores across Australia. So the results came back that 16 sunscreen products failed to meet their advertised SPF. So, for example, some brands were claiming SPF 50, and it was found that they only offered a protection level of SPF 20 or SPF 30, and one particular brand, SPF 4.
That's quite shocking. When you buy an SPF 50, you expect and rely on an SPF 50.
Exactly.
But how did they get it so wrong? How do we test SPF?
So SPF, or sun protection factor, as it's known, measures how long sunscreen protects consumers from UVB rays, which is the main cause of sunburn and contributes to skin cancer. So whilst it's a good measure of the protection a product can provide, it gives no indication whether that product can protect from other wavelengths, which is known to cause skin damage, including UVA or blue light. So the SPF testing that is conducted is called an in vivo test.
So what does that mean?
So an in vivo test is performed on healthy adult human volunteers in a lab setting. So each volunteer is asked to apply the sunscreen product to one area of skin on the back alongside a reference agent, a recognised SPF adjacent to that area. These areas are then unprotected area of skin, which are irradiated with a controlled UVB lamp, and then assessments are made following 16 to 24 hours.
Okay, so it mimics the sun, basically.
Yeah, exactly. So when these results come back, they'll then give that, that all-important SPF reading, which is then used to make that label claim. So the actual SPF references the percentage of the UVB that is transmitted through the product. So where an SPF 30 filters out all but 1/30th of UV rays, so that works out to be about 3.3%, while an SPF 50 filters out all but 1/50th.
So do these results mean that these brands haven't been conducting these tests?
Well, this is the thing. So some of the brands have responded to say that the original SPF testing that they conducted did provide the level of SPF labelled on their product. Interestingly, it's been found that 8 of those products reviewed by Choice Australia obtained the SPF results from the same testing provider. So it's sort of being suggested that this particular testing house in question were not using the correct testing methodology and calculations.
Okay, so it's been isolated to one provider.
Exactly.
And what does that mean for CLINUVEL and our products?
So at CLINUVEL, we conduct a thorough due diligence on for any of our testing providers before entering into a partnership, and we will review all the methodologies and the calculations before adding that critical SPF number on our products. We also put our cosmetic products through fairly stringent testings to justify claims and use a variety of tests to go well beyond SPF to arrive at the polychromatic protection.
Okay, so that's reassuring. We're not just relying on one test from one provider. Okay, great. And what does the industry do moving forwards?
So I think choice testing has really provided that wake-up call for sunscreen brands. So moving forwards, I think the industry must review methodologies of the testing houses before proceeding with the testing, and review the calculations after the results have come back. Brands should also look at publicly sharing the SPF results in a way that they can educate the customer in plain language, so they can understand what they're actually buying and the level of protection that the product offers.
Yeah, that's important, isn't it? That education.
Definitely. Brands should also look to begin implementing the non-invasive in vitro SPF test methods, which have recently been approved by ISO. So just to give a bit of background information on that doesn't require exposing humans to that UV radiation. Okay. So that's the difference between the in vitro and the in vivo.
And why hasn't this been used before?
So it's been in discussions for a really long time, and a lot of experts in the sunscreen industry have been working really hard for 20 years to get this over
Oh,
the line.
wow.
So it's been a long process. It's not been an easy test to come up with.
Sounds like we're almost there, though.
Exactly, yeah. And the EU Commission have supported the development of the in vitro test methods. However, it's not yet known if the TGA, which is the Therapeutic Goods Administrator that regulates sunscreens in Australia, and the FDA that regulate the sunscreens in the USA, will use this new in vitro method.
Well, it sounds like they should if it's going to be more
Yeah. I
more
think it's just,
reliable.
I think it's because it's a new method, it's trying to get everybody to do it, and no one wants to be the first person perhaps. So
I
it's
see.
once one
Yeah.
person does it and gets good results from the in vitro method, it will just start to take over.
What can consumers do?
So I think for Australian consumers, they should stick with brands that are listed on the Australian Register of Therapeutic Goods, and they should look for the ARTG number, which is on that product label.
Okay. And what's the benefit of being listed on that register?
So the benefit of being listed on the register is that consumers can feel confident that the regulator has reviewed the sunscreen label and the testing methods, and that it's compliant in the country. But obviously, this choice testing has proven otherwise. So it looks like
Yeah.
there may be some gaps in the regulatory side of things as well, as to how that's part sort of slipped through the net.
Yeah. It sounds like maybe there should be more testing done than is currently being done.
Yeah. Other things consumers can do. So, using broad spectrum sunscreen, looking at UVA and UVB on that label. We've obviously just, we've already discussed UV protection. Sunscreen that protects against UVA means that it also protects against those rays that are present all year round, even on those cloudy and rainy days. Without having that UVA protection, sunscreen may prevent sunburn, but it will also allow for that long-term damage from UVA rays, which can lead to other things such as wrinkles, hyperpigmentation, and contributing towards skin cancer as well.
That sounds like it's a whole other podcast for us
Yes,
to
yeah.
discuss.
And maybe some sort of fairly obvious ones is consumers should also layer their sun protection. So what I mean by this is sunscreen just forms one part of sun protection. So consumers should also wear a hat, sunglasses, and seek shade at the hottest times of the day. And more importantly, reapplying sunscreen every 2 hours, or even more when swimming or sweating.
Yeah, it's that reapplication is really key, isn't it?
Exactly.
And so where do you see the industry going next?
So I think implementation of the in vitro SPF test methods, and the in vivo methods gradually being phased out. I think brands will sort of start coming together, the industry will start coming together to decode these SPF labels and educate consumers on the importance of photoprotective regimes, the claims on products, and how to apply and reapply them properly.
Well, it sounds like the conversation isn't over,
Yeah,
and it's
no.
something that we're going to keep coming back to in the future.
Yeah,
But this has been a really interesting discussion, and don't worry, we are going to have you back later on to discuss
thank
that
you.
wider cosmetic testing, including that UVA. So I really look forward to that.
Thank you.
Um, yeah, thanks, Alice, and thank you for everyone for joining us on this latest CLINUVEL podcast. You can learn more about our work, including our polychromatic protection products, at clinuvel.com. Thank you for listening.